Welcome to Both Sides Now, featuring the unconventional duo, Dr. Shirley and medium Kelly White. Two perspectives, one world. This is Both Sides Now.
Yay! Hi, everybody. I'm spiritual medium Kelly White, and tonight I'm here with John Williams. Hi, John.
Hey, Kel. Happy to be here with you. How's it going on a wonderful Monday?
Well, it's going actually very well. Today actually was a good day. I know. I'm happy to say that. Shirley's not here, everybody. She's, I can't tell you where she is. She's been gone for 3 weeks, but who's counting? Oh, me. But she'll be back next week. She'll be back next week, and she'll tell you all about her new adventure. I just can't spill the beans right now, or I would.
I know people have been asking me, and I'm like, oh, she just needed a little more of a vacation because we did take a week off, and then I'm like, she needs a little longer than we do. So,
Yeah, and John and I have just been doing nothing but work.
Yes, that is so true.
We've done a lot of shows, but it's been really fun. It's been really quite a week we had, wasn't it? Last week?
Yeah.
My goodness. Well, we have an incredible guest, but before we get to the guest, I have to tell you a funny story. Well, I'll bring the guest on and tell you the funny story. Let me, this is where Shirley is. Shirley's in a sarcophagus. Hi, Cheryl. Okay. Hi, Lee, and hi, Sandy. I know Lee and Sandy are going, wait, put that back right now, if you wouldn't mind. Lee and Sandy are going, who's that? What's going on there? I know you are, Lee, and I know you are, Sandy. That's Shirley. Shirley jumped into a sarcophagus like 25 years ago, and that's where she's remained. So
appropriate for our show today. So.
And
in the back there.
I have to tell you the funniest thing. I was telling Shirley last night, we were talking, and I was telling her that Kathy was going to be on our show today. And as I'm talking to Shirley, something's in my head, and I'm like scratching my head going, what in the world is this? And I'm on the phone with Shirley, and a golden beetle jumped out of my hair.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah, I felt like Marge Simpson. Like, what in the world is in that head? And it was a golden beetle. I actually have a picture of it. So that was
your animal totems, I tell you.
That was quite a
James
totem.
Was talking about the hawk today on Soul Care. So yeah.
Oh, the hawk. When I was at James's house, the hawk with the one in the mouth, the sparrow that came free. I turned to James and I said, "Ooh, that's a very important totem."
That's what he said.
And then 2 years later, he was divorced.
Oh, that's what he said. He said that exactly. Oh my God.
That was quite an important one. So this golden beetle in my head, I have no idea.
You didn't look it up?
I did look it up, and it was something like.
I will ask her because I saw a big reaction from her in the green room when you mentioned that.
So. Oh yeah, it was definitely had something to do with Kathy and Egypt, and then I got this picture of the sarcophagus with Shirley and.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, let me do the astrology really quickly, and then we're going to jump into Kathy because she's an amazing guest. Yeah. I just want to say this: tomorrow we have a new moon in Leo, and actually, everybody, that's a good sign. It's actually a good sign, not because I'm a Leo rising with the hair, but because Sun in Leo does make you feel a little better. We have the Sun in Leo, and then we have the new moon in Leo, and also Mercury's in Leo. So, and our friend Leo is watching our show tonight. It's a lot of Leos here. But all of that actually brings people courage. So tomorrow should be actually a good day. It brings you courage. It's bravery. Check in with yourself tomorrow. It represents the heart chakra. It kind of gives us a sense of stability, even if it's just for a day, even if it's just I'll take a day or two of that, It kind of gives you enough strength to go on. You get a couple days that are kind of nice. It kind of unites everybody as one. It should be a nice day.
Wow, a positive astrology update?
Well, that was just for that 1 minute.
Oh, no.
And now I'm going to say this, that...
Here we go. That's what James always says.
Hold on, everybody. Yeah. Kelly's talking. He said to me, honey, will you just give me the aspects for the year? Because everybody's asking me for it. So I'm actually working on that for him. Anyway, this is linked to on August 24th, Mars squares Saturn. Not good. Very bad, actually. That's government and laws and rioting and violence and a very intense time and frustration and impatience. All of this is leading us somewhere. You're thinking, where?
Yeah.
But it's leading us to profound transformation, profound that we've never had, maybe 20,000 years. I mean, forever, we've never had it like this. So I'm going to say we're going to have a couple of, actually, should be some nice couple of better energy. People may start to get frustrated. And then in a few days, all of this links to Mars squaring Saturn. Not a good time, actually. And then we kind of takes a dump from that period.
A total transformation coaster. Like this, we're on the transformation coaster. I mean,
it's a truth. It's a truth, John.
It's been a lot of
transformation
and downs, and you just never know. And then,
but tomorrow and the next day should be a little better. So I'm going to tell everybody about my dear friend. Dear friend who I met 7 years ago. We were laughing before the show on a ship in Australia, and we were actually with James Van Prague, and I got to know Kathy really well. And so this is Dr. Kathy Forti. She's a clinical psychologist with over 30 years in the mental health care field. And as a direct result of a near-death experience in 2003, Dr. Forti began working with multidimensional beings to bring forth not only new technology, but a greater understanding of how mankind's origins and evolutionary past are directly linked to the awakening conscious of today. How fascinating is that?
Yeah.
I know some people are saying, what did she just say? It means that everything that she didn't have a head injury, but she had a near-death experience. And because of that, it brought in all this information into her head.
Yeah.
And then she developed this amazing thing called Trinfinity 8 and Ascension 11. And it's all spiritual healing technology. And she's also the author of a book called, which I love this book, Fractals of God, a psychologist's near-death experience and journeys into the mystical. Believe it or not, she's also an experienced remote viewer, which she'll explain what that is because it's really interesting, and an ancient Egyptian mystery school teacher.
Wow.
Shall I repeat that? An ancient Egyptian mystery school teacher who leads annual healing trips through the sacred temples of Egypt. And I have to say, I tried to go on 4 different trips with Kathy. My mom died. My daughter had a baby. Then she had another baby. Then we got COVID. So each time I couldn't go with her. I had good excuses, though. I'd love to welcome my dear friend, Kathy Forti. Hi, Kathy.
Hi. I'll get you to come with me yet.
And never give up on me because I promise I'm going to get to Egypt. I've always wanted to go, and you're the perfect one to travel with. I love traveling with you. We've been all over the world together, you and I, except Egypt.
Yeah, except Egypt. Well,
gosh,
to be continued. Well, it's funny because you said about being courageous and everything right now. I almost put on a T-shirt today for this interview that said courage on it.
Wow.
Well, we're right in the same path. It was so funny. Kathy came to see me. We were having lunch or something, and she said, I have something to tell you. I said, I have something to tell you. She said, well, I'm moving from Los Angeles. I said, well, I'm moving from Los Angeles. I'll never forget that. We moved, 2 months apart? A
couple months apart. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
So we were both on the same wavelength. We kind of knew it was time that our paths were taking us, in a different direction.
Yeah.
But so I'm happy. So I'm in Arizona now, and you're in Wisconsin.
There you
Things
go.
that
Wendy's
I would have never imagined.
Starseed group, and you
were? Wendy was in our Starseed group, and well, where do you want to start, Kathy? I mean, Kathy, you're so interesting.
You did mention the beetle, and of course, in Egypt, that would be the scarab. And the scarab was a really wonderful talisman to protect you from, evil spirits. It was a good luck charm, a talisman. Everybody carried, their own particular scarab around. And, so that I really carried really
I'm like,
good.
I go, what's going on here?
Did you know about that connection, Kel, to beetles in Egypt? No?
Clearly, no.
No. I knew about that. That's so funny. Wow.
Oh, no. But I had a feeling it was big meaning, and it was gold. It was bright gold.
Yeah.
Well, last week I had a dream I was going to become an oracle.
Wow.
So I said, huh?
That's wild.
You got the
not a psychic, an oracle. and I said, well, what's the difference between an oracle and a psychic? And I had to look it up. So an oracle gives wise counseling, and that is direct link to the gods, it said, and to tell what would prophesize what would be happen in the future. So it's very similar, but the component that I got was wise.
Oh yeah.
You actually are wise. You're somebody I go to when I have questions. I'll say, Kathy, I got to ask you, have you ever heard of this? And she'll say, oh yes. And then really, you have so much wisdom and so much knowledge. It's unbelievable.
Well, thank you. Somebody once said to me, what could you, if you could have one thing to ask for? I said, well, it would be wisdom, because if you had wisdom, then you'd have it all. You'd know what to do under any type of circumstances. So, I think that if somebody gave me a superpower, I'd just ask for wisdom.
I would say knowledge
too.
is what is learned and wisdom is what is experienced. So wisdom, like you go through, a lot of experiences to get the wisdom, but the knowledge is something, you might have come in with other past lives or what have you, but the wisdom is like obtained, it's something experienced. So
and hopefully we're all learning wisdom right now. Kelly asked me, when she asked me to come on, I actually knew she was going to ask me.
She did.
Because I was on her starseed thing. Was it last week? Yeah. And we were the last guest on with two friends of mine that were here asking questions. And then after we got done, we went out and walked. And I said to my friend Dot, I said, it's time for Kelly to ask me to come back on her show. And we got back from the walk, there was a text, would you be on my show?
This is very true. Yeah, because Shirley had just texted me at that moment and said, I can't do it because of this thing that she's going through. And I said, not to worry. I have an idea.
Yeah, and recently we've had a lot of YouTube comments about the first appearance that you had on our show.
Yeah,
I can't remember. People would remember that.
You were on the show, I think 5 years ago, and we talked about
we talked about my near-death experience, the Trinfinity technology. We're not talking about that today. We're not going to go down that road because you can find. I guess you can call up one. Do you have an archive? You can call up that if you really were interested in that. Because she asked me, and I said, "There's so many things I could talk about. My alien encounters. We can talk about remote viewing. We can talk about Egypt. We can talk about my Ascension 11 technology. What do you want to talk about?"
Let's start with Egypt. Let's start with Egypt.
Okay. Well, first of all, I have to say that, we think that, most people don't know, we go back hundreds of thousands of years in Earth history, and not 10,000s of years. And most of our history has been lost, and sometimes it's been hidden purposely. And, to go back and talk about the Egyptian times and the healing times, you can't without actually bringing the Atlantean period, which was prior to the Egyptian period. People say, oh, the Egyptians, they built the pyramids, they invented all this stuff. And they were still dealing with bronze tools. There's no way they could have, had an explosion out of, all of a sudden out of nowhere, this knowledge of how to build these things, how to, reach different states, healing practices and so forth like that. And so you have to look, to the Atlantean period. And I always say that, if you go back in all the ancient texts, which I have, of all these different civilizations all over the earth, they all make reference to the old country, the land that came before them, that some of them talked about it, Atsland, Atlantea, Oddland, Aldland, Atala, Avalon, and they all sounded very similar, but they called it the old country, and that they were far more advanced. So, if I'm just going to kind of breeze over this because it could be very detailed, but there was 3 upheavals, and the last upheaval of Atlantis was the Great Flood, but they were prepared for it. The visionaries during that time, they knew it. And so they started bringing most of their knowledge and their people to the Egyptian lands and to preserve that knowledge. And they also built outposts all over the world. And we're talking about, when you go to Teotihuacan, the pyramids there, Chichen Itza, the pyramids, the Bosnian pyramids. They even say there's pyramids on Antarctica, which is questionable, but I'll get into that later. And, some people thought Antarctica was, Atlantis. Well, it was just an outpost of Atlantis. And some of the information is still buried there, but they wanted to preserve. So they made their like time capsules all over the world. And that's why there's so much similarities, even how they set up pyramids, sometimes in pyramids of 3, the sun pyramid, the moon pyramid, the whatever pyramid, and just like the pyramids at Giza, which were all linked to, the star systems. They were big on the Orion star belt and the Sirius star belt and so forth like that, because they believed a lot of their brotherhood came from those star systems. So, when I started to go back and look at all of this information, I knew that the healing practices did not originate in Egypt. They originated in Atlantis. And some of them were very, very unusual. And I kind of had, the first time I was there, I had an awakening. And if anybody hasn't been to Egypt, or if they have been, that a lot of times memories open there, because we probably all had lifetimes in Egypt somewhere down the line.
Yeah.
And so the first time I was there, it took quite a while, because there was the Arab Spring uprising, and that delayed one of my trips. And so when I finally got there, I went in cold, not knowing anything, and just wanting to experience it, not coming in with any preconceived notion. And that was the best thing for me, because then I started getting flooding with things that I remembered, and walking into temples and knowing exactly what was where in these temples. And I'll talk a little bit about that. But, since today I'm going to talk about the Atlantean healing things and the whole ascension process, how that ties in.
Can you do me a favor and tell us a little bit about Atlantis? Because there'll be people that are watching that don't know what Atlantis was.
And the ascension. A lot of people don't even know what the ascension process is either.
Well, I'll get into that.
Yeah.
Well, there was the mythical thing that we always heard from Plato, that there was a land that went down on a great flood or something, a big continent that went down. And it was always debatable exactly where it was, because there may be a few continents over time. And even some of the scientists have said the Earth has gone through a number of pole reversal upheavals, over hundreds of thousands of years ago. So certain things changed over time, and that's why a lot of things were lost. Oral history was preserved, but after a certain time with the Egyptians, nobody kept that oral history. So it did get lost. But this Atlantis was a land that it was sort of built in concentric rings. There was many water tunnels and water canals, sort of like Venice. and people there were actually, some people talk about it was actually in a slightly higher dimension than third dimension now. And because they used their technology in a way that was not beneficial to man, that they came down. And there was an upheaval. They were fooling around with, I don't want to go into the whole aspect of it, but they were fooling around with technology and crystals and things like that, sort of think about the super collider in CERN, Switzerland, kind of that kind of, and, some of it got corrupted. That's a whole other story. And some of the people during that time did not know that certain factions of it were corrupting the process. And so many souls were lost in this, but there was wise souls that did take this information to Egypt, hoping that, to avoid if the Earth, and then they tried to stabilize the Earth through a grid system, through the pyramids and so forth like that, so that there wouldn't be any pole axis upheavals in the future. So it kind of gets complicated. It's a whole nother thing. That's why I'm just kind of breezing over that now. I mean, you can find many things on Atlantis. You could, Edgar Cayce did a lot of things on Atlantis. And he pretty much said that, well, let's go back to the Greek philosopher Plato. He had said that when he went there in the 4th century BC to Egypt, that the Egyptian priests were already telling him that the pyramids had been there for over 9,000 years. And this is in the 4th century. And when the Greek historian Herodotus went there and talked with different people, they said that, I think it was the Sphinx. He told them that their written history, went back 13,400 years, which would be about 14,000 years our time now. So we're dealing with, I mean, the Egyptians say 4,000 or 5,000 years, but the true Egyptologists kind of wink and nod at that because, if they're smart, they realize it goes back a lot further than that. But then we're stepping on some religious beliefs. Oh. And especially, Islam goes back to Allah was around 4,000 years ago or so forth. And if you start bringing things way before that, it starts getting kind of tricky. So they just kind of slough over that, that there was something before Allah, or there was something, well, God was ever, always, Mm-hmm. So the whole process that the Atlanteans taught the Egyptians was the process to return to primordial source, meaning the source energy. We all came from energy. We all had this kind of wanting, this kind of desire to learn and experience, and we broke off from this source, the energy source, to go seed on the earth and to experience in human matter all these particular things that we could grow. We could come back to source, sharing our knowledge and so forth. So the whole idea is to go through many tests before we can return to source as whole again. Some of us got a little corrupted here on Earth, obviously. We got a little astray. In fact, there was many souls that came down, higher knowledge souls that came down from the first event, the source event, that would saw that many of the souls were getting trapped in human matter, sort of like in rocks, in plants, in animals, and things like that. You sort of the old stories of the half man, half beast, half whatever. And they realized they got trapped in their illusion. So they came down to help release them so that they could understand and become one with the creative source again and not get disillusioned and trapped in matter. And this was the Melchizedek Brotherhood. This was the cosmic priests to the priests. These were the first priests. They were the much more higher level. And, when I first met James on that cruise, by the way, I remember thinking he pulled my name out of a hat for free reading. And I knew he was going to call me, even in this big room beforehand. And because all this energy rose up into me, and I said, oh no, he's going to call my name. And so I did get a free reading from him, which was really kind of wonderful. But I remember him saying something at the time, which I didn't understand, was he said, I've never seen this before. I don't know what this means, but they're telling me you came from the Melchizedek energy, the Melchizedek order or something. He said, you're going to have to look that up because I have no idea what that means.
I've never heard him say that ever before.
Yes, that's what he said. He said, I've never seen this before. I don't know what that means. And, it was awakening for me, especially in one of the temples in Egypt, which was home to the Melchizedek priesthood, which is Abydos, which I'll talk about in a little bit, and that's where a lot more memories came with. And it doesn't mean you're anything special. Usually Melchizedek priests, if you've worked in it, you're initiated through every lifetime. It's a service to others. You stay in the background, you do your work, you don't, not the whole limelight thing. So, anybody who claims to be a Melchizedek priest and who's out there, trying to be, a star, I have some questions about. So anyway, with this Melchizedek priesthood, they were the true visionaries. They were they could see the future. They could open portals. They had specialty rods made for them, sort of like the rods of Moses, which they called the rods of Ra. And you had to be past initiation stage many lifetimes over to be able to use this, where you could transmutate many different things, from energy to matter, from matter to energy, and so forth. So it was like a magician's sword. It really was like a rod, and it had a tuning fork at the end, and it looked very similar to the symbols that you see on the Egyptian walls called the Waz scepter. And it has a little tuning fork kind of at the end. And So many of these were purposely disappeared. They did try to kill the Melchizedek priesthood during certain periods of time. That's a whole nother story. But anyway, let me tell you, which I think is really germane to what's going on now, and what many of your viewers will be interested is what that process looked like for a wannabe initiate during those ancient times. And sometimes these initiates were poor children given by their family into the temples to be schooled and trained. And most of the time, a lot of times they were girls because they didn't know what to do with the girls. They weren't as important as the boys, obviously. So if we looked at, when you look at the Nile, now the Nile in itself was it's the longest river in the world. And it's the only river that runs south to north versus north to south. People think it starts, by the Mediterranean and flows downward. And the only reason it's south to north is because down in the south is higher land and it runs down. So that's why it's one of the only rivers that runs south to north. But these temples were built along the Nile because the Nile was looked at as the giver of life, the water source. And so many of the initiates would start at certain temples, but the true route was the root temple, which started in Aswan. Now we know Aswan now because it's the dam, the Aswan Dam, and which is kind of like the national treasure of Egypt. Without it, all the Nile would flood all the lands, which it used to do back in ancient times. There would be a flood period, and but that doesn't happen anymore. And this, the root chakra would, in Aswan, would be like the foundation, the start of the journey, a new birth. And many people relate that to Philae Temple, which is the Isis temple down there. And so it's a very soft feeling temple, even though that's the root, because you're setting your foundations for how you are going to rise up in this process. Now, the next one is would be the sacral center, which would be Kamumbo. Now, Kamumbo is a really interesting, and I've had some interesting experience at Kamumbo as well. Kamumbo is the primal emotions, base and sexuality, of course, and it deals with releasing fear. Now, it's ruled by Ra, but also the crocodile god Sobek. And so there's initiation, a crocodile initiation at in the well there. And it's kind of interesting because you need to release your fear, because if you're stuck in your fear, there's no way you're ever going to rise to the higher levels. And so we're talking about the lower level chakras right now. And so what they did at Kamumbo is they had this huge well, stone well, that was maybe about, 25, 30 feet deep. And they'd fill it with water, and they put a crocodile at the bottom. And there was a little opening towards the bottom of the well, which a little tunnel that you had to find your way through. So what the initiate would do would be to get in the water. They couldn't dive in. They had to be in the water and do a surface dive down with one breath to try and find this tunnel to find their way out. And of course, avoid the fear of being killed by the crocodile. And one breath. And
John, is that a no?
No.
Yeah, that's a no
some
for
didn't
me
make
too.
it. Some didn't make it. Some came back up to the surface and would have to try again, or some drowned. And so but the one thing they didn't know is that was a really well-fed crocodile down there. You wouldn't have eaten them anyway. But they had to face their fear of this, not being able to breathe, having to do this. And I remember reading of one initiate saying, she took her breath and all of a sudden her lungs expanded and she saw a light down there that led her through the tunnel. And so she tapped into her own inner, a courage and to get through this. And she did. So, sometimes you have to try many times, but fear was the greatest thing. And of course, we all have a fear of death. Yeah. I mean, most people do. You and I
drowning drowning in crocodiles too.
And crocodiles, frankly, yes. They kind of stack the deck with that crocodile.
Yeah.
So, and you asked me beforehand, I said, oh yeah, I had an interesting experience at Kamumba. I was there, I've been there during the daytime and I've been there at nighttime, but I was there one time, and it was on a full moon. And I was taking pictures of the full moon lit up over this beautiful Kamumba temple at night. And all of a sudden in the viewfinder of the camera, I see this little speck that's near the moon, this white speck. And so I move the camera over, but I can't see it with the naked eye. So I keep going back and forth like this, and I can't see it. And so I asked my friends, I want you to look in your cameras and see if you're seeing what I'm seeing. And they all had the same experience. Well, when we all realized, oh my God, it's a UFO, another UFO joined it. And we had two in the skies. Of course, they didn't come down, too bad. I don't know if some of my people in my group would have been open to that. But as soon as they knew we were happy and excited to see it, another one joined them.
Wow.
So,
did you have any idea where they were from?
No, I didn't.
Wow.
I didn't really I was just so excited. Yay!
Wow, Kathy, that's amazing.
Yes. And I have pictures of it too. It's too bad I didn't have pictures I could give up here. Well, anyway, so then once you dealt with the fear, you were ready for the next temple, which was the Solar Plexus. That is the seat of control, and that was the Karnak temple near Luxor, which was the seat of power, much like our Washington, D.C. is our seat of power for the United States. It was known as Thebes back then. It's called Luxor today. And Karnak temple, everyone, the pharaohs worked out of there, and the high priests, and it's a huge place, just a huge place. So anyway, in that particular temple, you had to deal with releasing anger and aggression. It's the control center, the solar plexus, and it's a kind of a tough one for most people. And I say right now to people, if you're dealing with fear, like from Kamumba, and you're dealing with anger from Karnak, you still got a long way to go.
What did they have to confront?
Well, situations where in general they would be challenged. That particular one, those were it wasn't like there was one general one. It was tailored sometimes to the initiate what push their buttons.
Wow.
So this was kind of interesting. So these are the lower chakras. Now, if you can deal with all that, the foundation, the fear, the anger, the aggression, finding your sense of control and so forth like that, and not getting your buttons pushed, then you could move to the next one, which was the heart chakra. That temple, one of my favorites, is Abydos. And Abydos is home to the Melchizedek priests. And, they don't know, Egyptology doesn't talk about it in that sense, but you knew it was true, because even though the pharaohs may have had their tombs in the Valley of the Kings or other places, they always put their symbolic tomb in Abydos, because they know that was closest to the gods in Abydos. And the priests there were closest to the gods. They were the cosmic priests. So it was sort of like, I'm hedging my bets, so if they bury me because I'm a pharaoh in the Valley of the Kings, but I have my symbolic tomb at Abydos. Now, Abydos, Abydos gives voice to the heart, so it's, excuse me. I'm mixing my thing up. It's love, self-love, joy, inner peace, opening the heart, so this was, you had to find some self-love. You had to start loving yourself, which is a big one for a lot of people.
Oh yeah, it sure is.
You can't love anybody else truly until you really have worked at loving yourself. So, and to find inner peace with that. So, Abydos, it wasn't only Abydos. There's another temple that's very close to Abydos, which is the temple of Hathor at Dendera. And so, Hathor has these ascension chambers. There's the ascension themes all over the walls in Egypt. and they abound, Osiris rising, the resurrection of this, resurrection of that. You can see how a lot of Christian themes, were took from the ancient Egyptians. Even the Trinity, Isis, Osiris, and Horus, Mother, Son, Mary, Jesus, Father, Son, Holy Ghost, and so forth like that. Very, very, very similar. So even the cross, the Ankh was like the cross, and now we have the cross in Christianity. So they didn't invent it. Everything they took and kind of stylized and made their own narrative about it. So anyway, the heart, you really, you had to learn to love being of service to others too, and to, love the earth and to find joy in the moment. To find inner peace in the moment and to take those little things. I mean, whether it be just sitting in a garden and feeling one with nature and so forth like that, and love of that. So sometimes at some of these temples, you could spend as much as 7 years trying to, and sometimes you moved up, much faster. Depended, nobody was saying, you have to do this in X amount of time. It was up to the initiate how fast they would learn. It's sort of like, what do you call it, a Waldorf school or something like that, how fast you move up.
Yes.
So then we move from Abydos and Hathor Temple, which the heart chakra, and we move up to the throat chakra, which another one of my favorite temples is Saqqara.
Wow.
And Saqqara that's when you give voice from the heart, communication, the throat, the will center, as Casey would talk about, giving voice to what you believe and how you feel and so forth like that. So that one was there was a really interesting initiation at Saqqara. And by the way, Saqqara is home to the sound healers.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. So when I take people on my tours, and a lot of them, work in, they're healers, they work in sound or Reiki or other things, but the ones that specifically work with sound, they go wild at this temple. Because what they would do is, remember that Saqqara, you had to already show you were pure of heart from coming from Abydos. So they made you walk the gauntlet. And by gauntlet, I mean they had these pillars that once you came through the gate of Saqqara, now they had a huge fence all the way around that has a very unusual motif on it. It looks very Frank Lloyd Wright, the design. So I know that Frank Lloyd Wright must have gone there and gotten really inspired by this design. And it is actually the design of the Atlantean seal.
Wow.
And it's the only place in Egypt you're going to find this. And if you find it on sarcophaguses in the Cairo Museum, you'll know that the priest came from Saqqara.
Wow.
Kathy, is there chimes playing in your background or something? I'm hearing
chimes.
Oh,
my wind chimes on my porch.
I was hoping that's what it was. I'm like, either when you speak, you're bringing. So,
yes.
You hear it, Kelly?
I did hear it.
Listening to me, they want to, bring in the sound. So
yeah, it's so funny. People
I can see it's getting a little windy out there, so we'll probably have a little rain. So maybe that's, unfortunately, you'll just have to deal with me right now with the chimes.
Worries. No, we're just hearing from the audience is just saying, where are those chimes coming from? Not on my end. It's on Kelly. I think it's Kathy.
Yeah, I know it's Kathy. She's radiating, so forth like that. Okay, so when they walked. So there was this fence, it was a wall all around Saqqara. And it was akin to what you'd call a frequency fence. The Saqqara priests would set up a resonance on this fence, and anyone who was not of this frequency or resonance would not feel inclined to come anywhere near Saqqara. So they could do their magic, they could do all their stuff without scaring the peasants, the populace, thinking that they were doing wild and crazy things over there. And so nobody would come in. So you had to be of that resonance. And they'd also file in all the niches of the fence, this wall inside, and set up a resonance. But as you went through the opening to the doorway to Saqqara in this stone entryway, there were all these pillars set up. Now, at one time, there was something called tachyon energy that was radiating between these pillars. And tachyon energy is it's a higher dimensional energy associated with healing. Now, if any of you know anything about Nikola Tesla, I'm sure you do, he called that an energy that was pure information.
Wow.
And they would watch, the high priest would watch the initiate as they came in to see if their heart was able to stay in their whole auric field is able to stay in this beautiful emerald green flame, because that told them that their heart was pure and they could sustain that no matter what was being, thrown at them. Wow. And then they could move to the next level and work at Saqqara. And now they had some amazing sound chambers at Saqqara where they would tune different chambers to different frequencies, a scale of notes like C or G or whatever. And the people that came there would, there was like a little kind of stone niche in the wall, and they'd put their heads in that niche and talk. And the high priest could, oh, it's raining now. I could see, and the high priest would diagnose them based on the sound of their voice in the resonating of these stone boxes. And everyone has their own frequency signature, so they would know if it was imbalanced or so forth like that, and how to bring it to a resonance. Now, the sound healers was quite incredible at Saqqara, because many people came there who were either traumatized, came for healing, that were either traumatized, disfigured, their soul had been shattered. So these were the ones who helped heal them. And they used crystals, they used color, they used sound, they used herbs, they used things like the magic mushroom cult, as I call them, because if you go through all of literature, mushrooms were always a part of transcendence and tapping into higher knowledge. And they use something called the Amanita muscaria, a very, very, very deadly mushroom, and they found a way to neutralize the poison, the toxin in it, but yet have the hallucinogenic properties. And to experience that, an opening, and usually it was, an opening of the, they call it the Brahma spot. It's actually in a baby. It would be your soft spot of your head, where they say many souls enter from that into human, and they also exit from that spot when they die, that area. So, they would work on all these people to restore them, to shatter, like I said, to make whole again shattered souls. And they had two temples there, the Temple of Sacrifice, the Temple of Beauty, and where they worked at that. And it was kind of interesting, because when I first came to Saqqara, and I knew right away what was what, because I remembered certain things there. And I was saying to my Egyptologist, there was this thing in the courtyard, and they said, oh, it's where they do horses to run around. And I said, no, they don't. I said, that's the opening to the Temple of Sacrifice. And I said, if they dig down deep underneath it, they'll find it. Well, a couple of years later, they did, and they found all these incredible things and so forth like that. But, so it was kind of interesting, what does open up for you there. So, okay, so now that's then we go to, that was the sixth chakra. Trying to keeping track here. Then we go. No, that was the fifth chakra.
Fifth.
Sixth chakra is the third eye, the pituitary gland, which is actually the Sphinx. We consider that the Sphinx because that is intuition. That's getting the bigger picture, and that's tapping into higher knowledge. Now, I've had the opportunity, to crawl under the Sphinx. And some of the tunnels have all been blocked off there, but so I actually, excuse the expression, have been up the ass of the Sphinx, because it's in the back. But also, if you followed Edgar Casey, he talked about the Sphinx being an opening to the Akashic records, Akashic records, potato, patata, whatever how you ever want to say it. And he, but it's not in this dimension. Those Akashic records are in another dimension. Yeah. They're there, but there is a portal there. And you have to be initiated. You have to have gotten to that stage to be able to tap into that portal in the next dimension to access that higher information of anything you need to know. Wow. So the Sphinx is, in old times, what they used to do is they used to, there's a hollow out area inside the actual head of the Sphinx, and the oracles would sit in there. I don't think I was an oracle. They would sit in there, and sort of like the Great Wizard of Oz, and people would come for advice and prophecy and healing, and the priests would sit in there and pretend like they were, the Great Oz, and they'd give out their advice, and of course they had to leave money and tips for the priests. So it was a little bit of a sideshow. So anyway, so once you got to that, you were able to tap into that higher knowledge, and that was part of the initiation of the Akashic records. Then you were ready for the final initiation, the 7th chakra, which is the crown chakra. And that would have been inside the Great Pyramid. And by the way, that's how they entered the Great Pyramid. And they came through, there's a tunnel that leads from the Sphinx into the Great Pyramid. And I saw it only because, that final initiation is, it's really a full commitment to spirituality and growth, okay? And to your service to others in that lifetime. So it's the epitome. Once you've gotten to that stage, and it would be, there would be anointing, there would be purification rituals, there'd be oils, and in the king's chamber. Now, it's kind of an interesting story. The first time I was in the king's chamber, I was in with 3 other people. And we had 2 hours alone, and I paid for all of them because they'd already been there. And I said, "I'm not going on. I'm not leaving you. I'll pay for everybody." So we went into the king's chamber, and I immediately got into the sarcophagus. And
like Shirley?
Yeah, and no one had told me to, but I figured, it looks like it fits me. And I laid down in there, and I knew actually which way to lay, because I knew that there was a special way, whether it be north or south and so forth like that. And I started immediately toning. And it is, that is the most incredible chamber because of the fact of the quartz in the wall, the red Aswan granite, which has quartz and mica. All these are sound conductors. Other parts of the pyramid are not built with this, but inside the king's chamber is to set up a sound resonance. And as I was laying in the sarcophagus, it's really coming down. Oh, it's storming. Oh. I hope I don't lose you. We needed the rain. So I'm laying in the sarcophagus, and I'm doing my toning and feeling the reverberation through my body, and it feels wonderful. And I'm like, oh. And then all of a sudden I saw, now there is no lid. There was at one time, and I don't think this is the original sarcophagus. I'm pretty sure it's not the original one. But all of a sudden I saw the lid close up on the sarcophagus, and my first thought was, I'm entombed. And there's that first quick moment of freaking out, like, I'm entombed. And immediately I heard my guides in my head say to me, Kathy, you know what to do. And I realized I did know what to do. I suddenly slowed down my breathing to a very shallow breathing. So I was barely, in my body, and I started to feel my body rise out. I went to a trance state, then I started to feel my body separate. And the next thing, there was a doorway that opened towards my feet in the sarcophagus. And there wasn't really one there, but I saw it. And it was lit with light. And immediately I shot down that. Now it's funny because it reminds me of somewhat of my near death, because, it was feet first again. and I thought, aren't I supposed to be going up? Ascending? Why am I going down?
Right.
And I shot down through the pyramid. I could see the tunnels. I could see, I went down deep under and I saw that there was water tunnels down there. I saw that there was a sarcophagus down there, and I knew that sarcophagus opened a portal to another dimension.
Wow.
And for some reason, I was drawn away from that portal because I think in my mind I would have stayed there. And I suddenly found myself going through the tunnel that led into the Sphinx. Inside the Sphinx, the next thing I knew, I was shooting out the head of the Sphinx. Now, at the time, I did not know there was a hole at the top that's been plugged in the head of the Sphinx. And I shot out into space. And then the next thing that happened, I found myself pulled right back into my physical body because one of the guys, he was the only guy in the group, he leaned over the sarcophagus where my physical body was. And he said, "Are you done in there yet?"
And that just snapped you. So all this time you were projected out of your body, basically.
Yes, I was in an out-of-body state and immediately went back into my physical body. And, I guess I'd been in there pretty long, but I figured since I paid for everybody, I guess I get a little longer in here. But he wondered if I was done yet. I guess maybe I'd stopped toning, and he wondered, did she die in there? And it was, so I don't know what would have happened had I kept going. But this part was the initiation process in olden times, ancient times, it was more like as a vision quest, the Indian vision quest, to go out into the cosmos. Many times you'd be there for many days inside where, you could die in there if you just decided not to come back into your physical body. But the whole key was to come back, because then you showed you had control. And that you just weren't going to go out and say, "Oh yeah, so long. I'm going to have a good time out in the cosmos." So, that was the final initiation in that process.
Wow.
Yeah.
Whoa.
So that was all. That's what, like I said, we have to go through those stages now. When people say 2020, to me, it was the year I had to cancel my trip to Egypt. I had to cancel my trip to Germany, to Italy, and a part of me said, "Oh, it was the year that, I didn't go anywhere." And then I thought, no, it's the year we all are staying inside to do our inner work and not be distracted by all the external, stuff that's going out there. We're being forced at this time because this is part of the ascension process.
Absolutely, it is. I completely agree. I mean, we're all, each of us, going through each individual chakra as we get going through this phase, really. I love that, Kathy. You're right.
Yeah.
Oof, what a time we're in, and what a time that must have been back then.
It was exciting times. I love every time I put off I was supposed to go in October, and my guides really said, "You got to cancel everything, until the end of the year. There's too much happening. Stay close to home." Yeah. And so I put it off till February 28th. So, if anybody is interested, they can always go to my Trinfinity8.com website, and there's a tab up on the top that says events, and it shows that I was doing it in October, but you can always email me through that link there and ask me you're interested in.
Do you go to all of the temples that you just described when you do your trip?
Oh, yes.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Do you do them in order?
There was only one time that we did it differently. We started from the top and we went down, and it didn't feel as good, but there was a logistic problem. And that was the only reason why we did it that way. But it's like a building of energy as we go up. So, it's that journey. Although we're not initiates, and sometimes I'll try to, do some prayers or meditation around it, or for them to bring in, because many people say, I remember this. Some of this resonance feels very familiar to me. And, that's the whole thing and then they go home, and up to 6 months later, they're still getting information coming through and assimilating it that, so it doesn't stop just because you're gone for 2 weeks on a trip. It continues to, I've had some people, it opened up their psychic channels.
Wow.
It certainly opened up mine much more than before. And, I just love that place. I miss not being able to do the October trip, but I'll have to wait till February. But, a year ago, I was saying, I hope this is not my last trip. I knew something big was coming.
Yeah.
I just didn't know what it was. I never would have thought, we're going to be hit by a virus or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, we're almost at the end of our show. I can't believe how
Did it go
fast.
fast already?
I know.
Oh my God.
Right?
Yeah.
Super
Should we
fast.
answer a question or 2 or 5?
Yeah, let's get some questions in.
I mean,
So
if
we
you
a
have
question-
time, Kathy,
Sure.
you okay
Yeah.
on time?
So,
Sure.
Kathy, can you talk to us about the link between cats and Egypt and cats and healing?
Well, when I think of cats, I immediately think of, Beset, the goddess Beset. And many of the people would have Beset statues in their house, the feline energy.
Mhm.
And it was protection as well. The Egyptians are very big on all their protection symbols. It was also had to do with, nurturing. You'd find some of those more at Hathor Temple. Hathor Temple has a softer focus to it too. So, if you didn't find Isis, you'd find Beset or something like that. And some people think of Sekhmet, but Sekhmet is the lion goddess. So it's just a little different, still in the cat family, but yes. So if you have an affinity to talk to cats, you probably had some Egyptian lives and, maybe worked in the temples with that goddess energy.
Wow.
Very cool. And I know that cats and their purrs are very healing frequency. Have you heard about that?
Well, we always feel good when they're purring next to us.
Yeah.
And when I'm a retired psychologist now, I don't do it anymore. But I stumbled on this thing that sometimes if you hug a person just to moan together, and you set up a resonance next to each other, and it feels great.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing about a hug, though. When you come in, you're heart to heart. You're hugging heart to heart.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So your heart's resonating with them, and you're using your throat chakra, your voice, to give voice to that communication and that heart.
So maybe you should be hugging someone saying "yum." From, yeah.
I'm a hugger, so this whole COVID thing is like,
me too, Kathy. I know.
Rough, isn't it? Oh, I was a hermit before, and I'm a super hermit now. I'll tell you. Yeah. So we've got so many questions because they were coming in as you were going along, and so I wanted to cover that one from Wendy. So let's get to some of these really quick because I know we're running out of time. So let's see.
Oh, we can't go over?
Can we go over, John, a few minutes?
Sure. Yeah, we definitely can. That's totally up to you. Sure.
Fine.
I don't have anything better to do.
So Ardelia,
this is so fascinating to me.
Fascination with Egyptian times and pyramids, and I dream of many of the symbols that are similar to those on the pyramids. And earlier, I know that June was asking, how can you find out if you come from that line, meaning the Melchizedek line? And I told her to have a Akashic record reading because I think that they would be able to discover that in the Akashic record reading. But
well, you maybe have the Melchizedek energy, which means that, those tend to be the people who are, they're not here service to self, they're service to others, so, and people think, oh, do I have to be initiated in this lifetime? No, you're initiated for all your lifetimes once you're in. And actually the Melchizedek energy was, Jesus was a Melchizedek, and, in a prior lifetime. And then when in the lifetime that we know him as Jesus, he actually he did go through the ceremony with the Melchizedeks, I guess, to re-strengthen that. And those are those lost years of Egypt that oftentimes we don't hear about. The Bible doesn't talk about them, but, he spent it in the Far East, in the temples there. He spent it in Egypt, in the mystery schools, and so forth like that. So he also was a Melchizedek priest, yes.
Amy says, do you think most people in this group lived there in a past life? I feel like I have. She's always been drawn to Egypt.
Yes. Yeah. Most people, if you've been drawn to Egypt or it's on your bucket list, you feel like you have to get there. Yeah. Then most likely there's been so many years of going through all the different dynasties in Egypt over, so it's inevitable that all of us have probably experienced that lifetime at one time or another.
And then earlier you were talking about the ascension process. Can we talk a little bit about like ascension symptoms and the whole process? Do you get into any of that?
No, because, I've looked at the list and it reads like a list of anything you could have.
I always think it's fun to check in with
Depression,
yeah.
Feeling like you don't belong here. The list goes on, and I thought, God, that reads like a diagnostic and statistical manual.
DSM.
That's right.
Do you want to explain a little bit what the ascension process means?
It's
to people
an
that
awakening.
don't understand it.
It's awakening to truth. And I don't mean external truth, someone else's truth. It means your own truth. It means giving up sometimes your gurus and, and giving over your power to them and having them tell you what to do. It's listening to your own inner guidance, your own truth, and being very discerning. Because, right now, both sides, this is a struggle between light and dark, bad and evil, shades of, gray in between. And each one of them is saying, no, my side is true. No, this side is true.
Yeah.
No, you got to go and find your own truth. Sift the wheat from the chaff. If you resonated with it, if it really, is something that resonates with your beliefs, and sometimes you find out that some things that you thought were true were actually false, and some things you thought were false were actually true. So you have to keep an open mind.
Mm-hmm. So when you were talking about the chakras, Tam had a question about what does severe pain in a chakra area mean, and can it be repaired easily?
Well, I would say that it means something's stuck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Its energy is stuck. And, with my Trinfinity 8 device, which is all based on mathematical codes and healing using crystals, and I won't go into all of it. You can go to my website and find out more about it if you're interested. When those crystals are put in your hand and they're hooked up into the computer, or you put them on an area of your body like a chakra, it's going to feel like an electric charge there for some people if there's a buildup of energy that is not going through smoothly. And one thing I failed to mention, so yeah, you will feel like a jolt there or pain there or something. It just means it's backed up. The energy is backed up. It needs to flow. Now, one thing I realized when I was in Egypt is that looking at the walls on the temple, you see sometimes different hand poses and posture poses. And when I took up Qigong, which I love, it's meditation in motion, I realized that these were many of the same positions on some of the Egyptian walls. This is like medical Qigong. These were all healing postures, and they were trying to tell you how to use these to attain a total state of balance, energetic balance in the body, because when there's energetic balance in the body, the awakening process is much easier and probably much faster too. And you're ready. But, if there's stuck energy, and we all have stuck energy at some point or another, that doesn't make, I'm not saying that's bad. It just means that, I would go to a really good Reiki practitioner to help work that energy out. Yeah.
Or have a session with Prajna. We always.
Oh, Prajna. Right. Yes. Yeah. Prajna's fabulous. Right.
She's the best. I love working with her.
In fact, I had a quick session with her, and it was the weirdest thing because I was getting ready to write my next book and I felt a little stuck. And she said, oh, there's like all this energy. It looks like it's coming straight down from the cosmos. And I felt the energy coming to my head. I felt I was being given a new mission. I was reporting to the mothership for my new mission. James always noted, he said, Kathy, I always knew you were an alien. And I would laugh, but Prajna is great. Yeah.
And to make a little tangent from the mother comment, let's talk about our workshop that's coming up, Kelly, really quick. Let's talk about the Bad Moms workshop.
Toxic moms, bad moms, toxic moms. Did you have a toxic mom or a bad mother? If you did, please join us on Saturday, August 22nd. It's at 12 o'clock Pacific time. And we're going to be going through different types of attachments with mothers, what kind of personality disorders they may have had, what it was like, and what it did to you going further. And actually, at the very end, we're going to have a healing meditation by James Van Praagh. So please join us. He's going to join us at the end of the class, right before his birthday. So very sweet of him. We're going to do a great meditation.
BothSidesNowTV.com. And we're going to be meeting with you on August 22nd at 12 p.m. Pacific time, 3 p.m. Eastern time. It's going to be a 2-hour event. Probably go longer than 2 hours, but 2 hours at least. So,
At least 2 hours.
yes. So I hope to see you there for that.
Yeah, please join us.
By the way, Kelly, do you remember that pillow your mother had on her couch?
I still have it right here. It's right here. If it's not one thing, your mother, it's your mother. I've
It's
got it
your
right
mother.
here. Yeah. You remembered that?
I remember
I should
that.
show, you know what? I should have
Kelly's
Carissa.
mother was a really famous therapist, but she had that in her inner therapy office on her couch. If it's not one thing, it's your mother.
You mean this?
Yeah.
I still have it. I've had very wealthy people want to buy this, and I'm like, no, it's mine.
It's great.
Yep.
That's great.
So funny.
Yeah, so we have one little question for you before we close, Kelly.
Okay.
And Kim is saying, Kelly, with all your lovely bouquets I have seen in your office in the last week, I wondered you have a garden of your own, because you're talking about your dad in the background there.
Thanks, Kim. No, I have a store called Pick and Save, and I've been very fortunate. They've had some beautiful gladiolas, and they're really inexpensive at this time of year. So I love to get all the colors, and I so appreciate it, because my mom taught me how to do gladiolas years ago, and she said to me, you have to have 3 bunches. You must have between 15 and 20 to make it look right. And at first I was like, what? It's a lot of work. And anyway, she was right. And so thank you for noticing. I love them too.
You notice how your mom is getting screen time right now, because
Oh,
Kathy just made a mention about your mother and the pillow.
My mom
and now
loved Kathy.
Someone's
She
talking
loved
about
Kathy.
the flowers.
Yep.
So, I love it.
Yeah, mom's been busy.
Yes. And Kathy, people have been blown away by all this information. We knew it was going to be a deep dive into the wisdom pool, and it definitely was. And
We
people
just scratched the surface, really, but
I know you did.
You'll come back again, because you've given us so much knowledge, Kathy. It will not be 5 years. We'll do it again very soon.
Yes, we will.
There's so much to talk about with you, as I didn't even know where to narrow it down. So you did it. Thank you so much. You did a great job.
Yes.
Really interesting stuff.
That was fun.
Gosh.
And if
And
you
John,
want to join us, we'll be doing a Zoom after show event. So we'll have
Kathy, you
the
want to
link,
join us?
and you can go into the Zoom after show meetup. I'll have the link in the comments. Normally we put it in the group, but please join our group. We're about 11,000 strong right now. No, 1,100 strong right now. So yeah, I'm soon to be 11,000. No, but so if you haven't joined it already, do so. It's Both Sides Now TV community group. You want to go to Facebook and click on the button there that says join the group, and I'll get a request and get you in. And we'd love to have you. We do a lot of holding space for one another, and get together and just discuss our week and what's been going on, and really support one another during these really challenging and stressful times. So
And come on back, Kathy, because I know people are going to be like, I have a question for you.
Well, if I can figure out where to go.
John.
Oh yeah, I'll have that all up. I'm going to do it right now as we speak. I'm creating it as we speak, and so I'll put that in the comments, and I'll send that to you, Kathy. And you can join. And
it's fun.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everybody. And so great to see everybody. And Kathy, thank you so much. So appreciate it. I just love you so much. Such one of my dearest friends. And John, thank you so much. And I'll see everybody Thursday. We'll be back Thursday.
Yes, Thursday at 2 p.m. Pacific time.
Ask me anything, except for the Egyptian stuff.
Eastern. Yes, for an Ask Me Anything spiritual with Kelly White. All right. Sounds
Take care,
great.
everybody.
Take care. We'll see you. Be good to each other and yourself. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Both Sides Now, featuring the unconventional duo Dr. Shirley and Kelly White. Two perspectives, one world.